3:16. 1,500 hours, 16 minutes. 15:16. Daf Yomi, tractate, Makos, or Makos. Daf Gimel Amid Aleph. I'm sorry, Gimel Amid Beis. 3b. With the words Af Ve'afal Gav, Yehoshua lo karinen be lo yigos, Sofer sinidei lo yigos. So the Gemara started off with a statement by Rabbi Yehuda Amar Shmuel. He said that if someone lends somebody money for 10 years, the sabbatical year abrogates the debt. And it absolved the borrower to pay it. I mean, of course, he could pay it if he wanted to, but I guess legally he could say that the sabbatical year, the Shemitah, canceled it. But let's see what the Gemara says. Afagav, now we're on top of Gimel Amid Beis, Gimel Amid Beis 3b. And even though now, during the sabbatical year, we do not yet read concerning his loan the prohibition, he shall not exact it of his neighbor and his brother, because the Lord's release has been proclaimed. Deuteronomy 15:2. As the time for repayment has not yet arrived. Ultimately, when the time for repayment arrives, he will come to a situation where the prohibition, he shall not exact it, applies. Therefore, like all their debts, it is abrogated by the sabbatical year. Meisi Rav Kahane. Rav Kahane raises an objection from the Mishnah. Rather, the court estimates how much money a person would be willing to give. Okay. Omnim kama adam rutzili teni yu elav zuz biyado beni teni kan v'ashloshim yoim ubeni teni kan v'ashloshim shanim. Iyam b'shiviyas b'shamtoi kulinami boi shlomi halei. If Kahana raises an objection from the Mishnah, rather the court estimates how much money a person would be willing to give so that he would keep a loan of 1,000 dinars in his possession, and one calculates the difference between that sum in a situation where he would be required to give the money back from now until 30 days have passed, and that same sum in a situation where he would be required to give the money back from now until 10 years have passed. And if you say that the sabbatical year abrogates a 10-year loan, the conspiring witness need to pay the borrower the entire sum of the loan as well, as their testimony sought to render the borrower liable to pay the debt that by right should be entirely forgiven. I mean, did it mention Prusbal? What about a Prusbal? Okay, let's see what's going on. Amar Rava Achava Ma'askinan Bimal Valamashkoin V'moisu Shlavaisav Lebezdin Ditnan Amar Valamashkoin V'amoisu Shlavaisav Lebezdin Ein Mashmitin. Rava said, what are we dealing with here? In our Mishnah, we are dealing with debts that are not abrogated with the passing of the sabbatical year. For example, in the case of one who lends money on the basis of collateral, or in the case of one who transfers his promissory notes to the court for collection, as we learned in the Mishnah in Shvi'it 10:2, in the case of one who lends money on the basis of collateral and one who transfers his promissory notes to the court for collection, the sabbatical year does not abrogate those loans. In those years, the debt would not have been forgiven during the sabbatical year. Therefore, the conspiring witnesses are not liable to pay the entire sum. Igete Amri, Amra Yehuda Shmuel, Amal Ves Chaveroi, Nechser Shonim, Ein Shvi'is Mishamtoi, Yafal Gav Di Asile Videlo Igois, Hashtamiha lo karin and ben voice. There are those who state another version of this discussion. Or Yehuda says, the Shmuel says, in the case of one who lends money to another for a period of 10 years, the sabbatical year does not abrogate the debt. And even though when the time for repayment arrives, he will come to a situation where the prohibition of he shall not exact it applies. Now, in any event, during the sabbatical year, we do not yet read the prohibition he shall not exact it concerning his loan. Amar Rav Kahana af anan nami tenina. Omdin kama adam wotzeritin viu elef zuz biento ben nitin mikan v'eshashim yom ben nitin mikan ad 10 shanim. V'yamar shvis v'shamtoi kulinami bo shlamile. Rav Kahana says we learned this ruling in the Mishnah as well. The court estimates how much money a person would be willing to give so that a loan of 1,000 dinars will be in his possession. And one calculates the difference between that sum in a situation where he would be required to give the money back from now until 30 days have passed, and that sum in a situation where he would be required to give the money back from now until 10 years have passed. And if you say that the sabbatical year abrogates a 10-year loan, then the conspiring witnesses should pay the borrower the entire sum of the loan as well, as their testimony sought to render the borrower liable to pay a debt that, by right, should be entirely forgiven. The fact that they are not required to pay the entire sum proves that a 10-year loan is not abrogated by the sabbatical year. Rava said no proof may be cited from there, as what are we dealing with here in our Mishnah? We are dealing with debts that are not abrogated with the passing of the sabbatical year. For example, in the case of one who lends money on the basis of collateral, or in the case of one who transfers his promissory notes to the court for collection. As we learned in the Mishnah, should we eat 10-2. In the case of one who lends money on the basis of collateral, and one who transfers his promissory notes to the court for collection, the sabbatical year does not abrogate those loans. In those cases, the debt would not have to be forgiven during the sabbatical year. Therefore, the conspiring witnesses are not liable to pay the entire sum. Rabbi Yehoshua says that Shmuel says with regard to abrogation of debts, in the case where one says to another, the stipulation, I'm lending you money on the condition that the sabbatical year will not abrogate my debt, even if the borrower agrees to the stipulation the sabbatical year abrogates the debt. The Gemara suggests, let us say, that Shmuel, that the lender who proposed the stipulation is one who stipulates counter to that which is written in the Torah, and in the case of anyone who stipulates counter to that which is written in the Torah, his stipulation is voided. Rav Omer yesh lo alav onah. Shmuel Omer lo ein lo alav onah. The Gemara asks, so it wasn't stated that there is a dispute between Rav and Shmuel concerning this matter. In the case of one who says to another in stipulation, I am selling you this item on the condition that you have no claim of exploitation against me if I charge you more than the item is worth. Rav says the buyer has a claim of exploitation against him, as one cannot stipulate to waive the halacha of exploitation. And Shmuel says he has no claim of exploitation against him. Apparently, according to Shmuel, one may stipulate to waive the Torah law in monetary matters, as it is tantamount to waiving his rights to money due him, and it is not in effect. It is not in effect counter to that which is written in the Torah. Ha'itmar ale amar Rav Anan l'didi mifashale min lishmo al manas she'ein lecha alai ona'a ein lo alav ona'a al manas she'ein bo ona'a harayesh bo ona'a. The Gemara answers, wasn't it stated with regard to the halacha that Rav Anan said, it was explained to me personally by Shmuel himself, that the matter depends on the formulation of the stipulation. If the seller stipulates on the condition that you have no claim of exploitation against me, then the buyer has no claim of exploitation against him, as though he is waiving his right to money to him. But if the seller stipulates on the condition that there is no prohibition of exploitation in this transaction, there is a prohibition of exploitation in that transaction. Weiter. Okay, Hachanami. Hachanami Almanash Shodish B'Dei B'Shvi'is. Let's see here. The Gemara answers, wasn't stated with regard to Halacha Rav Anan said, it explained to me personally by Shmuel himself, that the matter depends on the formulation of stipulation. If the seller stipulates that on the condition that you have no claim of exploitation against me, then the buyer has no claim of exploitation against him, as it is though he is waiving his right to money due him. But if the seller stipulates on the condition that there is no prohibition of exploitation in the transaction, there is a prohibition of exploitation in that transaction. Okay. And just in case we don't read the Hebrew or in the Aramaic, it's Ha'idmar Allah Amr of Anan, Didim and Farshale, meaning Shmuel Abanash Shein Necha, Anam, Ein Wala Bona, Abanash Shein Bo, Bona, Harayesh Bona. Okay? And now, Hachanami Amanas Shilotish B'Tei Mishvi'is, Ein Shvi'is Mishamtoi. Here too, if the lender stipulated to the borrower, I'm lending the money on the condition that you will not abrogate the debt during the sabbatical year does not abrogate his debt, as the borrower is merely waiving money due him. But if he stipulated on the condition that the sabbatical year will not abrogate my debt, the sabbatical year abrogates the debt, as that is a stipulation to nullify the halacha of sabbatical year concerning that loan, and one may not stipulate counter to that which is written in the Torah. Tana malvis kaviristam ein shoyle toive pachas b'shloshim yom. Sofer Rabba Barachana kame derav levemar hanim mili b'milu v'shtar lo yavel v'shdina l'tarach techas v'shtar b'tzir mitlatin yomin aval milve al peh lo amar le'rav hachi amar chavivi echad val v'shtar echad mal al peh. Apropos the loan discussed in the Mishnah, the Gemara said to say, Shutat, one who lends money to another for an unspecified period is not permitted to demand repayment from him less than 30 days after the loan took place. The Gemara comments, Rabbi Bar Barachana, who was seated before Rav, thought to say, this statement applies only with regard to a loan with a promissory note, as a person does not typically exert himself to write a promissory note for a loan whose duration is less than 30 days. But with regard to a loan by oral agreement, no. It may be for less than 30 days. Rav said to him, this is what my uncle, Rabbi Chia, said. The halacha applies to both one who lends with a promissory note and one who lends by oral agreement. If one fails to establish a time for repayment of the loan, he may not demand repayment until 30 days have passed, since the loan was given. The Gemara knows. That is also taught in the Bride that one who lends money to another for an unspecified period is not permitted to demand repayment from him less than 30 days after the loan took place. And that is the case with regard to both one who lends with the promissory note and one who lends by oral agreement. Okay. Amalei Shmuel Rav Masna lo titev akar echa ad shedim farashta la leha shamata benat ha milta de'amur Rabbanan hamar bes chavero istam eino rashai letovo pachot mishloshim yom. The more related, Shmuel says Rav Matana, you shall not sit on your feet until you have explained this halacha. Lo titev akarecha, maybe on your knees. You should not. Isn't it your knees? Your feet. Lo titev akarecha, your knees. I think you shouldn't sit. Maybe it doesn't need to bend your knees. Like koren means like kneeling, right? So akarecha, lo titev akarecha. Anyway, he said you shall not sit down, basically, until you explain this halacha. Explain it immediately. From where is this matter that the sages stated derived? One who lends money to another for an unspecified period is not permitted to demand repayment from him less than 30 days after the loan took place, and that is the case with regard to both one who lends with a promissory note and one who lends by oral agreement. Amar le Ketiv karav shnasa sheva shnasa shmita mashma shinemar karav shnasa sheva einu yudea shehi shnasa shmita and ma tamad lomar shnasa shmita ma tamad lo shnasa shmita lomar lecha yesh shmita acheres shehi kazo ve'ezo zu amalas chavero istam שאין רשאי תבוא פחות מ30 יום. דבר 30 יום בשנה, חשוב שנה. Rav Matna said to him, that is derived from a verse as it is written, the 7th year, sabbatical year, approaches. Deuteronomy 15:9. The question arises from the fact that it is stated the 7th year approaches. Don't I know that it is the sabbatical year? Rather, why must the verse state the sabbatical year? It is to tell you that there is another period that is like the sabbatical year. And which period is it? It is a period in the case of one who lends money to another for an unspecified period, who is not permitted to demand repayment from him less than 30 days after the loan took place. During that period, as during the sabbatical year, one may not exact payment for his loan. In what sense can that period be characterized as a year? It is, as the master said, 30 days in a year are considered a year. V'yamar Rav Yehuda Marav hapoteach bais hatzavar b'shabas chayav chatos maskif l'Rav Kahana b'chima ben zeh l'megufas chavis amar le zeh chibur v'zeh einu chibur. And Rav Yehuda says, that Rod says, one who unwittingly opens a new neck opening in a shirt on Shabbat by cutting through the fabric and threads that kept it closed is liable to bring a sin offering. By creating the opening, he renders the shirt fit to wear, thereby fashioning a utensil on Shabbat. Rav Kahana objects to this. And what is the difference between this and the stopper of a wine barrel, which the sages permitted piercing on Shabbat in order to serve wine to guests? There too, by piercing the stopper, he fashions a utensil. Rava said to him, the cases are not comparable. In this case, that the neck opening of a shirt, the material closing the neck hole, is considered a connecting element, meaning it is an organic part of the weave of the fabric. In that case, that of the stopper of the barrel, the stopper is not considered a connecting element, as its purpose is to be removed from the barrel. V'amar Yehuda Amarav Shloshet Lugin Maim Shinafal Techem Kurtov Shel Yain Umarein Kamar Yain V'naflu Mikveh Lo Pisaluhu Maskim L'Rav Kahana Chima Ben Zeh L'Mei Tzeva D'Tnan Rav Yossi Omer Mei Tzeva Poslim Es HaMikveh Shloshet Lugin Amar Le Rave Hasam Maya D'Tziv Amikre HaChacham Ramezir Mikre. And Yehuda says that Rav says, in the case of 3 log of drawn water into which 1/64 of a log, a quart of wine fell, and the color of the water is like the color of wine, and that liquid fell into a ritual bath containing less than 40 sa'ah. Although the sages ruled that 3 log of water drawn invalidate a ritual bath, in this case, the liquid is not invalidated because the halachic status of the liquid that fell into the ritual bath is that of wine. And wine does not invalidate a ritual bath. Rav Kahana objects to these. And what is the difference between this case of water into which wine fell and the case of dye water, as we learned in the Mishnah, Mikvaot 7:3. Rabbi Yossi says dye water in the amount of 3 log invalidates a ritual bath. The wine, like the dye, colors the water. Rava said to him, the difference is that there, the mixture is called dye water, where the water maintains the status of water, but here it is called diluted wine. The Gemara asks with regards to Rav's statement, but didn't Rabbi Chia teach that 3 log of water into which a quart of wine fell reduced the ritual bath into a state where it's no longer valid? Rava said that this braita is not difficult, as this statement of Rav is in accordance with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and that braita taught by Rabbi Chia is in accordance with the opinion of the rabbis who disagree with Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, as we learned in the Mishnah, Mikvaot 7:5, in a case where there are 3 log of drawn water